Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I have a spine-chilling story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. We're diving into the eerie tale of Whispers in the Woods, where a group of friends finds themselves trapped in the heart of Ravenswood Forest, facing mysterious shadows, sinister whispers, and supernatural horrors. As they drive deeper into the darkness, their car breaks down, and they soon realize that the forest is alive with malevolent forces. Get ready for a journey filled with suspense, thrill, and terror as they uncover the forest's dark secrets and fight for their survival. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a terrifying tale. Now, let's get into Whispers in the Woods. The moon hung high, a silvery sentinel in the pitch-black sky. Four friends, Amy, Jake, Sarah, and Tom, drove down a narrow, winding road through the heart of Ravenswood Forest. Their laughter filled the cramped car, echoing off the silent trees as they shared stories of urban legends and spooky tales, unaware of the nightmarish reality waiting for them. "I told you, this forest is haunted," Sarah said, her voice half joking but with a hint of genuine unease. "Come on, Sarah. It's just a bunch of trees," Jake replied, keeping his eyes on the road, though his grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. Tom, the skeptic of the group, leaned forward from the back seat. "Ghosts, witches, and haunted forests, people just make this stuff up for fun. There's no such thing." Amy, sitting next to Jake, stared out the window, her thoughts wandering. The deeper they drove into the forest, the more oppressive the darkness became. She felt as if the shadows were alive, watching their every move. Suddenly, the car's engine sputtered and died, plunging them into a suffocating silence. Jake tried the ignition again, but the car refused to start. "Great, what now?" Tom grumbled, his bravado fading. Jake sighed. "Let's check it out. Maybe it's something simple." The four of them stepped out of the car, the cold air biting through their clothes. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees towering like ancient guardians of a forgotten secret. A faint rustling came from the underbrush, making them all jump. "Probably just an animal," Jake said, though his voice lacked confidence. They popped the hood and peered at the engine, but none of them knew much about cars. Frustration mingled with growing fear as the forest's oppressive silence pressed down on them. "Do you hear that?" Amy whispered, her eyes wide with terror. A faint whispering drifted through the trees, indistinguishable words carried on the wind. It was as if the forest itself was alive, murmuring dark secrets. The friends exchanged uneasy glances. "Let's get back in the car," Sarah said, her voice trembling. They climbed back inside, locking the doors, as if that would protect them from whatever lurked outside. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of eerie voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "What is that?" Tom asked, his bravado completely gone. Amy clutched Jake's arm. "We need to get out of here." Jake tried the ignition again, and this time the engine roared to life. Relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. As they prepared to drive away, a dark shadow appeared in the middle of the road, illuminated by the car's headlights. It was a tall, humanoid figure, its features obscured by darkness. "Who the hell is that?" Jake exclaimed, his voice cracking. The figure didn't move, standing unnaturally still. The friends were paralyzed with fear, unable to tear their eyes away. Then, without warning, the shadow darted towards the car, moving with an unnatural speed. "Go! Go!" Sarah screamed. Jake floored the gas pedal, and the car shot forward. The shadow vanished just as quickly as it had appeared, leaving them shaken and breathless. "Did you see that?" "What was that?" Tom shouted. "I don't know, but we need to get out of this forest," Jake replied, his voice steady with determination. The road seemed endless, winding deeper into the heart of the forest. The whispers continued, growing louder, more insistent. Shadows flitted at the edges of their vision, and every now and then, they caught glimpses of movement among the trees. "It's like we're driving in circles," Amy said, her voice small and frightened. Jake didn't respond, his focus on the road. Panic set in as they realized the forest was trapping them, refusing to let them leave. "We need to find a way out," Sarah said, her voice trembling. As they drove on, they came across an old, dilapidated sign that read, "Welcome to Ravenswood Village." The sign looked ancient, its paint peeling and letters barely legible. "Maybe there's help in the village," Tom suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. With no other options, they followed the sign's direction, hoping to find someone who could help them. The road led to a small, deserted village nestled deep in the woods. The houses were old and abandoned, their windows dark and empty. "This place gives me the creeps," Amy whispered. They parked the car and cautiously stepped out, the village eerily silent. The air felt thick with a malevolent presence, and the whispers had become almost deafening. "Let's split up and look for someone," Jake said. "We'll meet back here in 10 minutes. Reluctantly, they agreed and went in different directions. Amy wandered down a narrow alley, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt eyes on her, watching her every move. Suddenly, she heard a soft sobbing coming from one of the houses. She hesitated, then pushed the door open. Inside, the house was dark and cold. The sobbing grew louder, coming from upstairs. Amy's curiosity overpowered her fear, and she climbed the creaking stairs. At the top, she found a small room with a single, flickering candle. A figure sat in the corner, its back turned to her. "Hello," Amy called out, her voice shaking. The figure slowly turned, revealing a gaunt, pale face with hollow eyes. It was a young girl, her face twisted in anguish. "Help me," the girl whispered, her voice echoing with sorrow. Amy took a step back, her mind screaming to run, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. The girl's eyes locked onto hers, and Amy felt a cold, invisible hand grip her heart. "You must leave," the girl said, her voice filled with urgency. "They will come for you." Before Amy could respond, the girl vanished, leaving her alone in the dark room. Trembling, she fled the house and ran back to the car, where the others were already waiting. "Did you find anything?" Jake asked, his face pale. Amy nodded, too shaken to speak. They climbed back into the car, desperate to escape the village. As they drove away, the whispers seemed to follow them, growing louder, more frantic. "We need to find a way out of these woods," Sarah said, her voice filled with desperation. They drove on, the road twisting and turning, leading them deeper into the forest's heart. The shadows grew darker, and the air felt thick with an unseen presence. Every now and then, they caught glimpses of the shadowy figure from before, always just out of reach. The friends felt the forest closing in around them, a living entity determined to keep them trapped. Panic set in as they realized there was no escape. "We have to keep going," Jake said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "There has to be a way out." As they drove on, the car's headlights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the trees. The whispers grew louder, now sounding like a chorus of tortured souls. The road seemed to stretch on forever, a never-ending nightmare. Suddenly, the car came to a screeching halt, throwing them forward. Jake tried to start the engine again, but it was dead. "No, no, no," he muttered, pounding the steering wheel in frustration. "Look," Amy said, pointing ahead. In the distance, they saw a faint light, like a beacon in the darkness. Hope surged through them, and they decided to follow it. They left the car and walked towards the light, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they drew closer, they realized the light was coming from an old, decrepit church. The building looked ancient, its walls crumbling and covered in ivy. The friends hesitated, but desperation drove them forward. Inside, the church was dark and cold. The only light came from a single, flickering candle on the altar. The whispers seemed to converge here, a cacophony of voices that made their skin crawl. "We shouldn't be here," Sarah whispered, her eyes darting around the room. Jake ignored her and walked towards the altar. As he approached, the candle flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. A cold wind swept through the church, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Who's there?" Jake called out, his voice echoing in the darkness. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, cloaked figure with eyes that glowed like embers. The friends froze in terror as the figure approached, its presence radiating malevolence. "You have trespassed in my domain," the figure said, its voice deep and resonant. "Now you must pay the price." The friends backed away, but the figure raised a hand, and an invisible force pinned them to the spot. The whispers grew louder, a deafening chorus of voices that seemed to come from within their own minds. "Please let us go," Amy pleaded, tears streaming down her face. The figure laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent shivers down their spines. "There is no escape. You belong to the forest now." As the figure spoke, the shadows seemed to come alive, wrapping around them like tendrils of darkness. The friends struggled, but the shadows tightened their grip, pulling them deeper into the abyss. "Fight it!" Jake shouted, his voice filled with determination. They fought against the shadows, their willpower their only weapon. Slowly, they began to break free, their bodies shaking with effort. The figure's eyes blazed with fury, and it raised its hand again, summoning more shadows. But the friends refused to give up. With a final, desperate push, they broke free from the shadows and ran towards the church's exit. The figure's enraged roar echoed behind them as they burst through the doors and into the forest. They ran, their breaths ragged and hearts pounding. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees whispering dark secrets. But they didn't stop, driven by a primal instinct to survive. Finally, they stumbled out of the forest and onto a road. A passing car screeched to a halt, and the driver, a middle-aged man, got out. "Are you kids okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. The friends could only nod, too exhausted and terrified to speak. The man helped them into his car and drove them to the nearest town, where they were able to call for help. As they sat in the safety of a brightly lit diner, the events of the night felt like a distant nightmare. But the whispers still echoed in their minds, a haunting reminder of the terror they had faced. They knew they would never forget the night they spent in Ravenswood Forest and the dark, malevolent presence that lurked within its shadows. The forest had claimed many before them, and they had barely escaped with their lives. But they had survived, and they would never return to the haunted woods again. Or so they thought. As they left the diner and walked towards the police station, a cold wind swept through the town. The whispers began again, faint and distant, but unmistakable. The friends exchanged fearful glances, knowing that the forest's darkness was not so easily escaped. The whispers would follow them, haunting their dreams and reminding them of the horrors that lurked in the shadows. The forest had marked them, and they would never truly be free from its grasp. They had survived the night, but the whispers in the woods would never let them forget.